the president, as did President Obama. He is looking for a shift of the burden within NATO. That's appropriate. That is happening. That's gaining momentum. That's part of the point I made to President Trump when we spoke a few days ago, is that it's not just he's winning the argument, he's won the argument. Countries recognize that they need to take more responsibility, see the direct threats.
So that's Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney basically giving Donald Trump a high five there for basically letting every NATO member know that this idea, they got to spend more of their GDP. What did he say, Jim? He said he's not just winning, he won this argument.
He won the argument, and quite frankly, Aaron, you'll see an interesting, how can I put it, consensus on the part of all NATO members on how brilliant, intelligent, genius, charming, and absolutely foresightful the President of the United States is. Although we have to point out as well that while they're doing this, they're simply, going into arms deals, and not because of the United States. In fact, the irony here is the U.S. will be the last factor in the equation of any NATO member's defense plan, because the U.S. and this is not just a matter of Trump, Aaron. Right now, the message that Trump has delivered and America has delivered to NATO is, you can't be sure we're not going to elect an even bigger lunatic when this guy is gone. So you know what? Everyone is basically sauf qui peut. The center of gravity, if I can mix that metaphor, is that Canada is now drifting more towards Europe than it was handcuffed to the U.S. And it's so funny because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there'll be this huge backlash across the country. I don't remember a time when a Canadian Prime Minister was basically making so many arms purchase announcements. And basically, he's kind of like John Wick in the movies there when he goes in to get his stuff, when he has to get outfitted. It's a scene in all the movies, right? And sometimes they pretend it's a wine shop. Sometimes they pretend it's tailors. But he goes in, like Carney's going, I'll take a few of those German subs. And while you're at it all, give me a few of those Norwegian surface to air missiles there. That's got to be a pretty good deal. We're spending hundreds of millions of dollars, and we are arming ourselves, and it is long, long overdue. But goodness me, it's so strange to see it all happening so fast and so quickly. And as we heard, we had a little taste of it on the news earlier, that now Mark Carney is going to be dealing with Saudi Arabia. Yeah. I got to tell you, this is not a new dossier. In fact, you and I, 15 years ago, you and I were talking about this whole arms deal that the Harper government had signed with Saudi Arabia to provide basically tank bottoms for turrets for basically urban warfare tanks. And the thing was, despite all the huffing and puffing and colorful socks, the Trudeau government did not rescind this deal, saying no, we have to keep it in effect, blah blah blah. And this is when it became clear to a lot of Canadians that despite all those great kind of tear-inducing, blue beret-wearing, child-cuddling Canadian Forces people doing peacekeeping duties around the world, the fact of the matter is we have a pretty effective armed forces, and now we're arming them to the teeth. And you know what? If someone can give us something that we need, we'll take it. And if we can sell them something that they need, as we have in the past, we will. I mean, it's hardly new, but it's just so strange to see it happening up front, in your face, and with apparently no second thoughts whatsoever.
Yeah, well, I guess at the end, in the back of anyone's mind here, if we take Mark Carney as an example, right, you don't know what you're going to get from Donald Trump. And if we weren't putting up this, going for 2.5% to 3%, I think that's the next target here. Who knows what might happen, right? I think that's kind of the approach here. But
also to hear a Canadian Prime Minister turn around and say, Russia is our adversary. And the Arctic is not a flank. The Arctic is our front. This is where we are going to have. If we're going to have a fight with Russia, that's where it's going to happen. And he's 1,000% correct. And he might even have it with China. Hell, he might even have it with the U.S. Because as global warming continues, as that Northwest Passage, gets wider and wider and wider, as access to all of those resources becomes even broader, and it becomes easier for submarine fleets to fly their way from one end of our north to the other. Listen, you better, how can I put it, load for bear, as we say, in these here parts, Aaron, because you cannot rely on the goodwill, certainly of the United States, and certainly not of Russia, and quite frankly, not even of China. So it's great to trade and whatever, but the old idea, speaking softly and carrying a big stick.
Yep.
Well, let's make sure we get the biggest stick we can.
By the way, were you surprised? I mean, maybe it's an obvious question. Surprised that Greenland came up again because it was part of this, right?
No. He's a senile raving lunatic, Aaron, and he keeps playing the same cassette over and over again, and people keep ignoring it. And in fact, excuse me, just before I came on, Mark Rutte, the head of NATO, right, was being interviewed, and a Danish reporter said the fact when you stand there and you nod with Donald Trump saying things about taking over Greenland, do you lose your self-respect? And unfortunately, I didn't have the time to hear what his answer was.
Well, hold on. I have part of his answer right here.
Oh, there you go.
Like that and say nothing. What I always do is acknowledge when praise is due, and I think we should praise Donald Trump for the fact that NATO is so much stronger. Of course, it has to do with the Russian threat, it has to do with the war in Ukraine, but it very much also has to do with President Trump delivering now what since Eisenhower the United States tried to achieve, equalizing spending between the US and Europe. And it makes Europe stronger. It makes Europe more relevant for the United States as a partner. So that is the transformative character of this summit, of what happened in The Hague, the implementation since The Hague, this summit.
So basically, no, he did not lose any self-respect by just sitting and acknowledging
and
Donald Trump.
That's the Trump cassette, and I'm sure he's working on a new cassette in case they hire a bigger lunatic for the next 4 years in the next president.
By the way, did you happen to catch the Danish PM reacting to this thing? Trump again going off about Greenland. Did you catch what she said?
No.
This is Mette Frederiksen, the Danish PM, with respect to Greenland and the U.S. threats.
Yeah, I heard the U.S. president yesterday, and I think the U.S. position is unfortunately very clear on this topic. And our position is as clear as it has been all through. Greenland is, of course, not for sale. We hope that all, including all allies, will respect the Greenlandic people's right for self-determination. And we are a sovereign state, and we need everybody to respect our territorial integrity and our sovereignty.
Okay. That enough to get Donald Trump to move on to another subject? Probably not.
Well, he's already there because he has to win the Iranian war for the 39th time now. Because the attacks are going to resume, Aaron.
Yeah.
And cynical minds may say he's just shorting the market because the markets have just gone for an absolute tailspin today. Oil shares have gone up a bit, but once again, there have been some studies that suggest that a lot of these decisions, how can I put it, coincide with certain purchases on the market prior and after. But God forbid, at this point, the White House is such a garbage dump of corruption. You can't tell one day from another what the hell is going on. So anyway, I think the good news is for NATO, for Europe, for us, is Donald Trump is distracted for the time being. But the week is young. We still got a few days left there, buddy, so who knows where he's going to go.
What's your issue with the REM? I know we've had slowdowns the past couple of days. Is that what you're on about here?
Yeah, because if anything that you and I are and the listeners are paying for, screwed up this often, this reliably, there would be a public inquiry. There would be people screaming bloody murder. The whole idea of this, and I know some people don't, some people like to use this expression, perhaps a little over the top, but the REM was rammed down Montreal's throat by Quebec. We were ordered, any route where the REM goes, you're going to get rid of any public transit service that was there. We went through all kinds of disruption, and it's very, very simple, Aaron. There's no big discussion to be had here. The thing doesn't work. It doesn't work in winter. It doesn't work in summer. It has power failures. It has equipment failures. It has equipment on the track failures. And those are the excuses I'm giving you just from the past 48 hours, buddy. Okay? And they're expecting people to continue to have any faith in this. Please, don't. $7 billion of our pension fund invested in this lemon. Okay? And you know how many people on the South Shore, in the West Island, up in Deux-Montagnes, that they have been absolutely convinced never to abandon their cars as this gong show continues. It's an absolute scandal. And I'm amazed that we haven't heard word one from any of the candidates in this election concerning the situation. But, I forgot it's Greater Montreal area, so who cares?
Yeah. We should have bought the warranty. I think that was our big mistake here. Yeah. By the way, is there a warranty with this thing when you spend $8 billion on something like this and things break? Don't you get like 30 days?
You have legislation it was one of the last pieces of legislation that was passed by the CJAD government that essentially that said, you know what? Yeah, these guys can build, and you guys have to get out and this and that. And I remember I talked to you about this, and I said, I got a bad feeling about this one, Amigo, and sure enough, it didn't work.
Well, the good news is it spurred a couple of people to put together a REM song. I'm going to play that in just a sec. But Jim,
okay.
Yeah.
And before you go any further,
Yes, sir?
I just want to thank you for the last half hour about reading. I got to tell you, I'm sure that you, never mind the people who called, you've probably evoked a lot of memories on the part of a lot of people. You may have actually driven some people back towards their bookcases or their libraries. And I, for one, just the number of memories that your history of reading evokes. I'm in a weird situation because when I was a kid, I was hooked on science fiction, and I read Isaac Asimov's Foundation trilogy, and now I'm watching it on Apple TV, and it's kind of weird because it's almost like I've come full circle, and it's a very faithful adaptation. But that said, it's not quite as brilliant, not quite as colorful, not quite as amazing as what I saw in my mind's eye when I was reading it when I was a kid.
Well, thank you for saying that. I will tell you, Jim, quite surprising to me, I've never seen so many text messages on a single subject as I have on that question today about what book are you reading, what have you just finished. So maybe we'll do that again, kind of make it an every now and then kind of feature. James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Matt.
Listen, and you're there for heart-wrenching knockouts.
World's biggest stage.
And breathtaking triumph. 2026 FIFA World Cup. The knockout stage. Every match, every moment. Listen on TSN Radio. Join the globe on the road to the July 19th final. 2026 FIFA World Cup. Stream it all live on TSN Radio. Available on iHeartRadio.